Hi, Michelle here with Sew It Online, and today it's all about basic beginner paper piecing. So don't shut me off yet, just kind of listen a little bit. If you've attempted paper piecing and you said forget this and throw it out the window, well, give me a shot to kind of show you some basics of just foundation piecing or paper piecing, and there's a little bit of a learning curve, but I think you'll be able to grasp it with no problem. So let's talk a little bit about what I got going on the table here. So first things first, why would you want a paper piece? Well, paper piecing is done to get those exact points or those precise, angles that you want in a quilt block. You can also use paper piecing to kind of help you form a design that you may not be able to find anywhere else in a quilt block, maybe like a traditional quilt block. So if you want to do like a character, or if you want to do a log cabin quilt and you want really precise points, paper piecing is a really good way to accomplish that. Some of the things that you can use to find templates is to go on the internet and just Google free basic paper piecing designs, and you'll have a bunch that will come up. I actually was able to find these here. They're just basic paper piecing. And you'll notice this is the actual size that printed out. I didn't change my printer at all, but I just did black and white to kind of save on ink. So I didn't, I kind of took off the color on my printer. So, but there's all different shapes and sizes. These are really basic and, beginner ones. I'll show you a couple later that are much more intricate. And so once you kind of get the hang of paper piecing, you can try those and you'll be a whiz at it. Another place that you can find paper piecing are just good books. This one is New York Beauties and Flying Geese. It is Carl Hensch, I hope I said that right, with the foreword by Tula Pink. It's got some gorgeous, gorgeous templates for pillows, for quilts, beautiful flying geese units, but it's got a lot of good information in here about paper piecing. This is one of my favorite books. Another one you can do is sometimes even just magazines will have paper piecing in it. This one I didn't pull for specifically for paper piecing, but this little card, we're going to use that in a little bit, and I'll show you why. There's also great books at the library, and even Nancy Mahoney has Learned to Paper Piece, has a great book out, and this is very helpful on doing. Look at these points. You cannot beat that, trying to get those points, and it's so precise with paper piecing. So let's talk about, you got your template. Now what other supplies do you need? Well, obviously you need fabric. So fabric, you can choose from just grabbing some scraps from your stash. If you're not comfortable trying to figure out what kind of goes with what, a fat quarter bundle, let me grab this real quick. This is the fat quarter bundle, and you'll have this for quite a while, but it is a great item to use. A fat quarter is roughly 18 by 22 inches, and this is a whole fabric line. And you can mix and match these colors to put some beautiful quilt blocks together using paper piecing. I actually have had some from the videos. I have a layer cake that I have just some scraps, and I can use this also for finding fabrics. But you don't necessarily have to go out and buy yardage. You use a lot of fabric, but you don't use that much fabric. So we're going to put these aside. Some other things you're going to need are some rulers. Now you do want to get, if you have one of these rulers with a 1/4 inch edge on it, that'll work fine. But you can also get one of these. This is what's called an add a quarter. And basically what it is, there's a couple different sizes. This is a 6 inch, this is a 12 inch ruler. And basically you're going to use this when you're paper piecing And here's one out of the package. You're going to see it's got a nice lip right here. So it's actually going to sit right up along the edge of the fabric and along the paper so that you can get a nice clean cut. So we'll use this here in a little bit. But it's called Add a Quarter. This is Add a Quarter Plus. It actually has a sloped edge to it. And if you're not doing really big quilt blocks, you can actually use a smaller size, which is right about a 6-inch. You're going to need a good rotary cutter. This one, the 45 millimeters, fine. You can also use the 28, and that even gives you a little bit more just precision. But either one with a sharp blade will help tremendously. Now I have a piece of clear plastic here. You can just see. It's just a plastic that you can like print out or cut out templates. I use this to help line up an edge, and I'll show you how I use that. It's the same thing I would use my little postcard for, and we'll show you that in a little bit. A glue stick is helpful. This is by Soline. It's just a fabric glue pen. You don't need it a lot, but just kind of hold down some of the pieces of fabric at certain times when you're paper piecing. I like this little roller. It's by Clover. It actually will give you a nice crease when you fold your fabric over. And you can like finger press, but this will help you give a little bit better crease in between pressing. Some good scissors or snips. And let's talk about thread for a little bit. So thread, I'm going to be using it's almost like a cobalt blue. It's a very deep blue so you can see it. I would use thread that matches your main components of your piece block. Even a light gray or an ivory works really well. These threads here are a 30 weight and a 40 weight. I'm sorry, a 12 weight and a 30 weight. These are a little bit too thick to use for paper piecing. What you want to use is something like this. This is Superior Threads, and this is called So Fine. It's a 50 weight. Now there's other brands out there that are 50 weight and they work beautifully. Basically, this is a thinner thread. It's not as thick as the 30 and the 12 weight, and it will help reduce the bulk in between your seams. So a good 50 weight thread works beautifully for paper piecing. What else do we need? You're going to use an iron and a press pad or your actual ironing board. We are going to do a very simple block today, and I did this as multi-colors. I may not use this really for a block, but I wanted you to really see the different colors in the block so that you can see the differences. Now you can mix and match colors however you like, but you're going to see our fabric is on one side, and when we turn it over, this is the actual paper. So that original piece that I showed you, where I found it off the internet, this piece here, all I did was put my foundation paper, and we're going to go over that here in a little bit. I put my foundation paper in my printer, and then I just blew up the template to the size that I wanted it to be. So pick out a template that you like. We're going to do this one today. Make the copy that you're going to need. If you're going to make 12 quilt blocks, then probably maybe print out 13 or 14 of them. I do like to have one just as a template that I will actually put my colors down, so I have this as a reference as to what color I'm going to put in what block. So paper piecing is kind of like a paint by number with fabric. We're going to start with number 1 and number 2, put those together, but I'll show you step by step on how to do that. So let me clear some of this off, and we're going to get busy paper piecing. So let's talk a little bit about foundation papers. So foundation papers, there's a variety of them out there. Now I've used copy paper, I've used newsprint, there's also Carol Doak's foundation paper, which works nice, or Simple Foundations, which this is actually a translucent, it's a vellum paper, and this is nice because it comes in a couple different sizes. So we have There's 25 sheets in this one, and it's 8.5 by 14, and this one is 8.5 by 11. So those are some good foundation papers, again, or Carol Doak's foundation paper. There's 8.5 by 11, and there's 100 sheets in this package. Now, these are very easy to use, and again, so is a copy paper right from your printer. You're going to find a reference or a paper that you will fall in love with, and not only how it prints on your printer, but how it tears when you are completely done with your quilt block. So you can, I'm going to show you a couple different ones here that you can see. This was printed on a copy paper. This is printed on Carol Doak's foundation paper, and all I did was put it right in the compartment where the paper goes, and then this is the simple foundation, the vellum paper. They all print beautifully, okay? So once you have your printed template, and we're going to actually just use, I'm going to just use the copy paper for today because it'll show up a little bit better on the camera. I'm going to make a couple copies of this, and I took one, and all I did was put in the color of the fabrics that I'm going to use in each location. So number 1, I have orange, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9 are all going to be yellows, and then I have a striped fabric for the outer edges. So we're going to use this plain one here, and this will kind of be our guide. So I'll put that off to the side for right now. So let's take a look at this paper right here. Now, you have two sides of this paper. One is blank, and one is got your template on it. Always remember, these are kind of the keys to kind of getting started with paper piecing. The printed side is your sewing side, okay? Printed side is always, always, always going to be your sewing side. So when you put this under your machine, this side of the paper has to be face up. The back side is where your fabric is going to go, okay? Now, in order to figure out where you're going to put what, we are going to start off with number 1, and number 1 on my template says we're going to use an orange piece of fabric. Now, I have gotten my fabric. I do, if I have yardage, I do like to wash it, and I do spray starch it and press it afterwards so that I have just a good firmness. Now, if you're kind of one of the individuals that just does not like wasting fabric, and a lot of us don't want to waste fabric, kind of give this still a shot, paper piecing, but I'll show you a tip at the end of the webinar as to how to save a little bit of fabric. But your pieces always need to be bigger than the area that it's going to cover. So not only do we need about 1/4 of an inch on all sides, but maybe even a little bit more to allow for that fabric to flip open. And I'll explain that in a second. So what's the very first thing we do? We have our template, front side, wrong side, sewing side, okay? I should probably write that down. This is the sewing side. I have a piece of fabric, and what I want to do is I want to cover it. I want to cover that area of number 1 with my orange, because that's my very first piece, but I want to be able to see that behind here I can see my template. Now, if it's hard to see on camera, a couple things I recommend. If you have a light box, this is a great time to use it. If you have a small lamp like this that's kind of got like a movable hinge on it, you can actually turn this on, and if you have like one of those sew steady tables, put the light underneath the sew steady table and you have a great flat light table right there. Or you can even put it in a window. Put it up to a window, a light source, a natural light source even, so that you can see that this orange is completely a good enough size to fill in number 1. So, but remember, fabric goes on the back, okay? So I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to lay this down so we can get the shot from above. And I'm going to lay this down here, and I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to look to make sure that number 1 is completely covered, even off the edge of the fabric, just for that little bit. I'm going to place this down, and what I'm going to do now is, let me pick this up. I have my fabric is on the back, and my template is up here, okay? Now I need to attach number 1 to number 2. So my number 2 piece is a yellow. So I'm going to grab a yellow, and I've kind of pre-cut some of these, and again, these are a little bit larger than I normally would even start off with. But I know this fabric is going to cover the number 2 triangle right here. So how do I know where to put it? Well, I like to take this clear plastic. It's got a nice straight edge on it. Or if you have one of your quilting magazines and you have one of these postcards, or even a 3x5 card has got a good edge to it, I'm going to take this template, I'm going to lay it on number 1, right on that line between number 1 and 2. I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to fold it all the way down. Okay? Now, remember that add a quarter ruler? It's got this lip right here, and it's got a nice edge. This is going to fit right here, and it doesn't move, but it gives me a perfect 1/4 inch right there. Now remember, I still only have my very first piece down. I'm going to take my rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut. I like the rotary cutter that has a retractable handle to it because I'm using it so much with paper piecing. I want to be able to have it safely put aside so I don't nick myself. Put this off to the side. So what is this done? I've got a great 1/4 inch. I'm going to pick this up. Actually, I'm going to open this up. I'm going to remove my plastic. Now when I turn this over, okay, and if it moves out of the way, don't freak out, it's okay. I'm going to lay that down and make sure number 1 covers everything. I have my 1/4 inch right there. One of the things I didn't tell you, and I didn't because I didn't even recognize it, with this particular fabric, I really don't see a right or a wrong side. But if I was starting off where I have fabric, say, let's pick this blue one. So this is a grunge fabric. It's got a nice, like a muddled print on it. There's definitely a right side and a wrong side. When I put on piece number 1, and always piece number 1, if I would put the blue on first, my blue and my paper are going to go wrong side of paper to wrong side of fabric. Always, because A or number 1 piece never gets flipped. It's right side up right from the get-go. Okay? So let's put this piece back on here. Okay, I'm going to flip this over, and you can see it's covering it completely. And if you can see through here, you can even kind of see my 1/4 inch mark right here. Okay, now I need to put on piece number 2. I'm going to lay this down, and because I have this nice edge that I trimmed, I'm going to lay my yellow fabric directly on here. And I'm going to line that up. That's why I like to cut at that point. I'm going to flip it over, because remember, this is our sewing side. Pieces are together. Now you can certainly pin at this point if you're comfortable or if you need to. And you can even pin the first piece on so it doesn't shift. I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to just pin the 2 together. I just need a single pin, but I also don't want to block that line of where I will be sewing. So let's take a look at this. Wrong side of paper, right side of piece number 1, right side of piece number 2. These are going to be right sides together. Okay? I only sew on this side of the paper. So let's put it in the machine. Now when I'm at home and I'm paper piecing, I actually have, you know, my sewing machine is right here, and off to the right I do have a small table. It's actually one of those hospital tables that go up and down that's on wheels, and that's a really good place to have like a small cutting mat, your rotary cutter, your straight edge, anything that you need, your pieces already cut from your fabric, just to kind of have everything ready. So you're going from here to there, here to there. You don't have to go anywhere farther. And we're going to set up the sewing machine and get us started with stitching. So let's take the paper and the fabric over to the sewing machine. I have my machine set up with my 50 weight thread in the needle position, along with the same thread as in the bobbin. I have just a straight stitch right now, but I moved my stitch length down to 1.4. So 1.4, 1.5, 1.68, that's fine. It just helps you literally perforate the paper. You can tear it away, and it's just so much easier when the stitch length is a little bit closer. So I'm going to stitch. I'm going to start at the tip here between 1 and 2. I'm going to take a couple stitches. I am going to back tack. I'm going to stitch along here and back tack there. And we'll get going here, and we'll slow it down a little bit. Now it does take a little bit longer to stitch because the stitch length is so much closer to each other. I'm also going to go beyond the paper and then just back tack a little bit. I'm going to cut my threads, take it off, and nice stitch there. You're going to see here I have my stitch. Again, I'm using the blue so you can see it. Take my pin out. Now at this point, if you notice, I have fabric 1 and fabric 2. Again, these are right sides together on the wrong side of the paper. I'm going to finger press this right here. Now this is why I like this little tool right here, because I can finger press this or roll this press it open really nicely. Okay, so I have 1 and 2, both right sides of the fabric. Now when I flip this over, okay, now I know I have to go to 3. I'm not worried about trimming yet, but what I want to do is, do you remember when we started with number 1 to 2, I folded that paper back? We're going to do the same thing right now. I'm going to take my template, my straight edge. I'm going to lay it right across this line right here, and I'm going to fold my paper over it. And it folds beautifully. And it doesn't matter if I fold the whole thing. Okay? This is where I like to trim. Take my add a quarter ruler and I butt it up right against there. So I have a nice 1/4 inch. See how much fabric I have to cut off? Again, this is probably a little bit bigger than I normally would for paper piecing. If you get a template, if you purchase one or if you download one, you can pretty much size your blocks and cut your pieces out a little bit closer. So I'm going to remove my add a quarter, and when I open this up, I'll move that to the side. So now we need to add fabric 3, which is going to go here. Now I know this kind of seems confusing. You're flipping over, but you're really just taking a look at where you're working at the moment. So I'm done with 1 and 2. So all I want to do is concentrate on 1 and 3 right now. So I know 3 is right there, and according to my template, I need another yellow piece. I'm going to lay this down. Remember that straight edge we did? I'm going to lay it down here. And if you can even see, this is where the outline of number 3 is. So, see on my fabric, I'm kind of just centering that right over my yellow piece, because my yellow piece is going to be number 3. This is the outline of number 3. If you would hold this up to your window or on your light box, you'll be able to see that a lot easier. So now that I have it together, I'm going to open it up. Now, if I wanted to pin right now, I could. I'm going to take it over to my machine, and because I'm like right here, I'm just literally carrying it over. I want to get this under. Now, I did notice as I was doing these and preparing for this, all my fabric is over to the left of the machine. I don't have any bulk of material on this side. So just a little tip to keep an eye out for that. So I'm going to put my presser foot down, back it up just a little so it's before that line. I'm going to slow my machine down again in case I put my foot down too much. So now I'm going to stitch a couple, back tack. I'm going to try and stay on the line as best as I can. And even here, I'll go past the line a little bit and back tack. Cut my threads. Now, I have a little bit here, so I'll just take my little snips and cut that excess off here. When I flip it over, that's my stitch line. I'm going to take piece number 3, I'm going to fold it over. And again, use my roller to help me flatten that out. Okay, nice point right there. So let's flip it over. Now we have to add, we have this whole piece done. Let's add piece number 4. Number 4 is green. This is the piece we're going to do. Remember, I have a wrong side and I have a right side. Always right sides together. I want to crease this line so I know where to place my green fabric. So take my plastic, line it up, fold it, and this is nice. I mean, it folds beautifully right over that piece of plastic or vinyl, whatever you might have. Now, see, I have this excess. This is what I'm going to cut off. Take my add a quarter, butt it up against that. This lip really keeps it nice and taut right up against your paper, your plastic, and your fabric. I'm going to cut this, put that off to the side. Now I know exactly where my piece is going to go. Let's open this up to take that out. I'm going to lay my number 4 piece down, right side up. I'm going to line up those edges, and when I look at this, I can see number 4 is right here. So I want to make sure that I'm about centered between those pieces. And again, with the light box through the window, you're going to be able to see this number 4 outline much better. I'm going to open this up. And now I'm going to stitch on line number 4. And just keep all these pieces together. Oh, I don't want to do, let's do that. That looks better. So just before the line, and remember, even before you start, you can check to make sure all your fabric is over to the left. And we'll keep stitching. It goes through that intersection beautifully. And I'm going to go just past it a little bit. And then I'm going to cut my threads. All right, and if I have a tail here, I'm just going to use my snips to trim that. Okay, so that was my stitching line. Let's flip it over. This is number 4. Look how beautiful that point is right there. Very precise. All right, so we have that done. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we just keep building upon each one. So flip it over. Now we have to do number 5. Take your template, line it up, Fold it over. Grab your ruler. I actually don't even throw these little pieces away because I'll show you a template later on that I'm working on that the pieces, I can actually use this for another paper piecing template. So let's take care of the ruler. Take out the plastic. All right, this is my straight edge right here as to what I need to line up. Number 5 is a yellow. And I'm going to pick this up and center it pretty much right over my yellow piece. Again, the fabrics are going to be right sides together. And I can see my number 5 wedge is right there. Okay. I'm going to open this up. And again, if this is where you need to pin, if it's getting too much or you can't see it, by all means, add a pin at this point. And I would put it right into probably the number 4 area here. So I just have a little pin. And I might even use a little bit smaller pin that doesn't put such a, like a bump into the paper. So remember, we always sew on this side. Put it under the machine. Now once you kind of get going with this, you're going to be like on a roll. Check all my fabric is off to the left, and we'll stitch. All right, cut that. This machine is nice too because it does have an automatic foot presser. It lifts it when I'm done sewing and done cutting the threads, so it just saves me another step. So we just finished stitching piece number 5 on. We're going to fold this over, give it a good finger press, and again with your roller, we're good to go there. Flip it over, make sure everything is flat. Now we're going to add piece number 6. So remember what we do? Step 1, take your straight edge of your plastic, fold this over, fold it all the way down, take that, add a quarter ruler, butt it up against that, trim off your excess, move your ruler and your plastic template out of the way. Now, I can see number 6 is right here. So, it's right where my green fabric is. Number 6 is also a piece of yellow. I'm going to take this, I'm going to pick it up, and I'm just going to slide it right on top about halfway on that yellow piece. See it? Okay. Fold open my paper. And again, if this is where, if you want to pin, you can, or if you think you can hold it together, put it underneath your machine. And I'm stitching 4 to 6. All my fabrics are off to the left. I have a little bubble there, so I'm going to bring this back over. Here we go. And I think I'm going to add a pin right here too. Now some of your paper templates are much smaller so that you can actually grip everything and put it right underneath the machine very easily. All right, so we have that pinned. Take it over. Now double check. See, I don't want that folded. Make sure it's laying nice and flat underneath. And I'm going to be stitching number 6. Put your presser foot down and let's stitch this. And again, remember to back tack at the beginning and at the end. All right, let's remove that pin. Take the snips, get rid of your little threads. Flip it over, Let's move this up a little bit more so you can see it. Finger press. Look how nice that is. Okay. Now, we're on to number 7, which is the blue fabric. Flip everything over, make sure it's flat. Number 7, this is the line here. So, plastic, fold, ruler, trim, save your bigger pieces. I'm going to take this and I'm going to just center it. This is where that point is. I'm just going to center it right over the blue. Okay? I'm going to open this up, get rid of my plastic, grab a pin, and I make sure all my layers are together. And I'm going to stitch from here to here. And I may need to remove that pin a little bit before. But you see, it's holding it all together. So let's flip this over. Remember, the print side is always your sewing side. Line it up. I'm getting close, so I'm going to remove this pin. And I'm just a little off that line. I'm not too worried about it. It's still a nice straight edge. And let's clip that. Get rid of my tail here. Piece number 7. Okay, nice points there. And I can use my roller to flatten that out. All right, now we're moving on to number 8. This is my line. Everything is nice and flat underneath. So, plastic. Fold just the paper over because we need to get rid of that. See how much bigger that blue piece was? I'm sure I could cut that down even more. All right. I'm going to add my yellow. And I know this is about the halfway mark right here. I know it's yellow because of my template. I'm going to line up the 2 lines, and I can actually see where my 8 is right here. And again, the window or a light box works beautifully here. All right, so I got that lined up. Let's add a pin. And let's stitch this in place. We only have a few more to do and to see what our block is going to look like. Now you notice, see how I put that pin in? It's a nice way, if you can keep it parallel, it runs together with it so you don't have to necessarily remove that pin while you're doing your stitching. All right, flip it over. There's number 7. I'm sorry, that was number 8. Don't worry about this excess because we're going to trim that off when we trim off using the outside lines of our template. So number 9, first thing we do is line up that plastic edge. Take your add a quarter ruler, I should say. Keep those pieces. Flip it over. So now I know number 9 is right here. It's right where the blue is. And number 9, according to my template, is yellow. So I'm going to line my blue up right along that edge, right there. Add a pin to it. And now I'm going to stitch on that line right there. And again, it's easier if you can put that pin parallel to your presser foot, so you don't have to remove it. It's real important to back tack at the beginning and the end of your stitching line, because when you go to tear that paper off, you don't want to rip out stitches either. All right, so there's number 9. Looking nice. Get the ruler and the roller on here. Get that out of the way. So where are we at? We are at 10 and 11. Okay, so let's do 10 first. Now I have some strips of fabric. I actually wanted to change the fabric up a little bit, so I'm just kind of guesstimate. So if I fold my fabric like this, I have a pretty good idea that that's about how much I need. So I'm going to just finger press this. And you can use your rotary cutter or your regular scissors to do that. 10 and 11 are going to be the same piece for me. All right, so I have my 1 through 9 is done. Flip it over. I want to do piece 10. I do it exactly the same way. Take that plastic, fold it over. See, I have all those fabrics that I had just sewn on. Now I'm going to trim them all at once. Right there. Remove this. Now we're going to add this piece. And I'm just going to go from one end to the other. Straighten that line all the way across. And this is way beyond my trim line, so I know I have that striped fabric in, and it's in a good spot. I'm going to open my paper up, keep it all together. Now this is a very basic paper piecing template, but there are so many more out there that are so intricate that it's amazing what you can do. You can make your own paper piecing template, and I've seen them where there are little dogs, there are little cats, there's, oh my gosh, there's everything. I mean, you can do Harry Potter, you can do football, baseball, you know, themes, making the pictures, and it's amazing. I've seen a penguin. It's really cool. So flip it over. Remember, this is my right side to right side. So when I flip that open, I'm good to go. And the only thing I want to check with this particular piece is that, see, I have some of my paper showing there. I want to make sure that it's still in my trimming. So we just got done putting stitch line number 10 down, and we flip it out, and we finger press it and give it a nice roll. Now you can probably press these in between, you know, with your iron. Just don't use any steam, because it will kind of the paper, the foundation paper, no matter which one you're using, could alter it a little bit. So just use a dry iron. I like to do it pretty much at the end. Now I notice, you know, I haven't really used the glue stick. When you do, if you do want to use it, the time to use it would be now. So if you wanted to, as you're going through your paper piecing, after you're done stitching, you could take this and it will help hold that piece down, so that when you do move it, it has some, you know, stay on the foundation paper. So I'm not too worried that I have some paper over here that has not been covered, because I know when I flip this over, my striped piece is still past my trimming line. We still have one more stitch to do, so let's do that. Make sure all of our papers are, or all of our fabrics are flat. So, plastic, and the closer you can get to that line, the better edge that you have when you press it. Just take that, add a quarter ruler, butt it up against there. Find my rotary cutter, there we go. Trim these pieces. All right, so we're ready to put on our last strip. Remember, right sides together. That's my right side. This is my right side. I'm gonna just eyeball that so my stripe fabric is down the center and I have it hanging off both edges. Okay? Flip the paper out. That's my stitching line. You can make, or actually I even know that there's templates out there to do, you know, like the square in a square, or you can do it with, you know, like the corners, half square triangles around a square to get those precise points. And again, my fabric is all to the left. On this side of the machine, nothing is on this side. All right, let's trim this real quick. Flip it over. Finger press that. Look how cool that's looking. And I'm going to move these things out of the way real quick. Move my fabric. Now I'm going to press this, and again, it's a dry iron. And did you ever use one of those clappers? They work really well too to help kind of set those seams. So I kind of have a messy block, but I'm okay with that because I'm going to flip it over. And the templates that you either download or you purchase or if you get from a pattern book, they're going to have an outside edge right here. That's the edge when the block is complete that you will use to trim your block down. So let me grab my bigger ruler here, if I can get it off of the table here. And I'm going to trim on the outside. Make sure all your fabric is folded out and nothing is tucked underneath. Let's move this over to make sure you can see it. So you'll want to figure out how many blocks you want in your quilt, and you'll print that number of templates. So we have our block. This line here is going to be your stitching line to attach to the next block. Okay? So this is what our block looks like. This is the first one I did. I like this one a little bit better. But look at those points. They're spot on. But I also have this gap here and here, and that's giving me my 1/4 inch seam allowance to attach from one block to the next. So I don't want to trim it right here. I need that excess to go to the next block. So we're all done stitching the block. We've trimmed it on the outer edges. Now we can tear the papers now, and a good way to do that is because you did that back tack at the beginning and the end, it's a good place to put your thumb and to start ripping your paper and then just kind of follow it all the way down. You can sit in front of the TV to do this. I even like to fold it, but put some pressure right there. Now this is just copy paper, okay? And if I have pieces like that, I can either rip them off or I'll grab a pair of tweezers. Now one of the things that I told you, remember, see this? Look how easy that is. Peels right off. Here, I'm just gonna pull it apart. It doesn't take very long. Because that stitch length was so much shorter than what maybe you would normally use, it's so much easier to tear off. But you'll get to liking whatever paper you like. And remember in the beginning I told you a way to kind of maybe save some of your fabric so you're not using as much or the pieces aren't as big? Well, one of the things you can do is to make a template, especially for the pieces that are in the outside of your block. Let me show you that as soon as I'm done with this. So look how nice your block is. Perfect points, enough seam allowance to add from one block to the next. Now I can do the same thing with this. You can lay these out different ways. You can put them side by side. You can put them opposite ways. You can have almost an endless color palette capability with that. But one of the things I wanted to show you is to make a template. Now if you look at this particular block, let me pull this one back out and another one of the templates. Do you see these pieces here and here, number 1 and number 9 and number 8? These have edges that could be either bias edges or they may not be on the straight of grain. So you really want to, if you're going to make a lot of these blocks, you can make yourself a template for these outside pieces so that this particular piece, this edge here, this number 8, the number 9 here, and the 10 here, all are cut on the bias. So in order to do that, you're going to take your fabric, and you could probably cut 4 to 6 layers at a time. You're going to figure out how many of these pieces that you need. So if I was going to do number 11, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take my thick plastic, I'm going to put it over my number 11 piece, and I'm going to trace using a Sharpie because I don't want that to go away. I'm going to trace all the way around, put a number 11. I'm going to then add a 1/4 of an inch all the way around. Then I'm going to add a 1/2 inch all the way around. And then I made one here. Then I'm going to add, I don't know if you can see this. You know, I'm going to turn this over so you can see it against the white fabric. Then I'm going to add a grain line. That way I know this edge here, this is the full size. So this is the block right here. This is a 1/4 inch added. This is the 1/2 inch added. Okay? Add the grain line. Mark it like you would like for a regular pattern. Then when I go to cut this particular piece out, or say I have 12 blocks, I need 12 number 11s, I'm going to run this grain line parallel to my selvage. And again, remember, this is your selvage on your fabric here, and you're going to just line this up so it's parallel. It's the same distance from here to here and from here to here. And again, you can butt this up against it closely. You'll use less fabric. It'll be on the grain line, so you won't, when you pull those papers, you won't have any maybe wonky blocks, and they'll be on the straight of grain, so they'll be much more stable for you. So that's a way to kind of help save fabric and to use templates for your individual pieces that are on the outside. Now, again, when in the beginning, remember I told you there's all kind of places to look for different templates. This is one of the things I'm working on now, where it is the New York Beauties and Flying Geese. Love this book. But you can see these are all paper pieced. Very fast, very easy. I leave them untrimmed right now until I'm ready. You can see all of my stitches, all of the pieces. So this is very easy to pick up and move to the sewing machine. One of the things I thought was super cute was I found this. There's a Frankenstein block and a Count Dracula block. And it's called Made by Marnie. It's Mary A. Hurdle. And she has the paper piece block for both of these. And you can even see the coloring that was done to try and separate that, so you kind of see where all of the different pieces that you'll be using. So she has different sections that you'll do, and then you'll sew them all together. So paper piecing, it's just endless possibilities of what you can do. So I hope you stayed for the whole thing and said, no way am I doing paper piecing. I hope you'll give it a try. It's easy, it's fun. Once you kind of get into that rhythm, it'll be like nothing, and you'll want to keep doing it. So Thanks for joining me today.